Hey, it's Keith from Outlaw Speed Shop. Today I want to talk about, what to do with your customs after you've actually finished them and you want to display them properly and take pictures and just get them to look really, really kick-ass on Instagram. So one of the techniques that I've been playing around with pretty much involves just a simple basic setup like this, which is nothing fancy. Just a, I don't know, Black& Decker workbench, some poster board. That's it. I'm using my phone for light. I've got a trigger for my camera. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm setting it up on a tripod. Let me get down to the right level. And I'm pretty much taking it at level. So let me turn this on. Okay. Let's see. See if you guys can see. All right, so essentially if you look, I don't know if you can see that or not, I'm pretty well zoomed in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take multiple exposures and they're all dark. So what I've done is I've set my a 4-second delay. And what that's going to allow me to do with a dark exposure is to paint the car with some light. And essentially everything is going to be black except for where I'm lighting. Unfortunately, most of my lights are really, really big, and I don't have a small LED, which would probably be about the best for this. However, I'm going to give it a try with my cell phone light. That's why you see the cell phone out. So I got a 4-second delay. And what I did is I set my f-stop, so my exposure for my depth of field, I've got it pretty high. But I've got my ISO down at 100 to let the least amount of light in as possible. And that's the lowest I can go on this camera. So let me shut I'm going to shut the light off. I don't know how much you're going to be able to see. I'll talk through it. And if it doesn't work, then I'll just narrate it after. Because unfortunately, GoPros suck in low light. So I'm going to put this down right there. And I'm going to go shut off the lights. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a basic exposure. You probably see nothing right now. So I'm going to take a basic exposure. I'm going to use my remote trigger. If I can find the button because I can't see shit. There you go. Okay, so that's what that, hold on a second, I suck at videos, so you have to bear with me a little bit. So that's what that looks like. Okay, it's kind of a base exposure, and that'll allow you to actually cut out the background if you wanted to in Photoshop. So let's take some more. I'm going to light it in different ways. Okay, see how it's got underneath, really nice. Now, I'm going to do it from the back. Okay, so now I highlighted the roof. Do it a couple more times. You never hurts to have more exposures. And that highlighted the side, which came out really good. Granted, it's a pretty beat car. Yeah, I should be using a custom, but I'm going to get a few more, mainly the front. See if I can get some highlights. Yeah, that one came out okay. Do a few more here. Yeah, that came out really good. All right, so now I can take all these and put them in Photoshop. So let's head up there. All right, so here we are in Photoshop. Actually, I'm sorry, we are in Lightroom. If you have the Adobe Creative Suite, you have full access to everything. And the Lightroom actually works pretty good with this method. Now, I took, I don't know, 2 series of pictures after I stopped recording downstairs. And I selected a group. So what happens is when you take these exposures, you have everything from light, dark, darker, and it just continues on. So the goal is to take and merge all of them together and take the best of each. So granted, you could take, like this picture, again, it's a beat up car. However, you know, this picture itself is pretty good. That one, not so much. You can kind of see the light streaks from when I was doing the running the camera back and forth for the light on my phone. You know, same thing up here. You can see it at the top. So, I mean, really, if I wanted to, just this one picture by itself, I could go in Lightroom and I can make all kinds of adjustments. However, I'm after a different look on this particular one. In, you know, certain customs or regular ones will look better this way. It all depends. I mean, use your own personal preference. So essentially what I did is I picked a group of them, and when you highlight them, let's say I want these, you right click, edit in, and open as layers in Photoshop. And what it does is, because it was on a tripod and nothing moved, all these are going to be perfectly lined up, as long as you didn't hit the camera or bump it or do anything stupid. So when you go into Photoshop, you can pretty much see the major layers here that I have. And what I did is I highlighted certain ones. So anything in green was the original photo that got imported from Lightroom. The red is just going to be for a sample, so you can see what I'm doing. So I take the darkest exposure and I put that on the bottom, because I kind of like the background. I like, you know, granted the thing is a little dirty. This isn't the best picture, but you get the rough idea. It's a good outline of the car. And what you do is every layer that you get, that you decide you want to keep, you're only going to take bits and pieces of each one. So for example, this one, okay? Now, there's certain things I wanted on this one, so you put it above it, you change the blend mode to lighten, okay? And what that does, it allows the lighter parts to show through. So essentially what you do is you do this, you pretty much start with your base layer, the next layer is a little bit lighter, which would be this, and you color in a mask, completely dark, and all you're going to do is color in the light areas. Okay, so you can see, let me zoom in a little bit, I only picked certain aspects. You can see the mask, you can kind of see what's white on it. So on this one I pretty much highlighted the seats, the tires and rims, a little bit of the side pipe, a little bit of the back, and a little bit of the grill. So the next one is really bright, but there were certain aspects of this one I wanted. So essentially, same thing, blending mode to lighten, create a mask, paint it black. Now I'm only painting in white on this mask what I want. So now you can see I've got the highlights here on the side, and I get a little bit more down below, down here, and then a little bit more of the side pipe, and a little bit of this rim. Okay, same thing on this layer. Okay, now this one was probably the best picture of all of them anyways. So now, same thing. There's certain areas I wanted. I really wanted the detail over the fenders. There's a little bit more detail on this red line. I darkened, or I lightened the side pipes a little bit more. So a lot of this is in layers and slowly, gradually building things up. And that allowed me to do and pretty much highlight everything I wanted. So I always create an extra layer so that way I can kind of see what I want. And actually, if I go back to this one, grab my white, set my brush really small. If you go up to your opacity and flow, you don't want them at 100%, because if you do that, if you're painting on the mask, see how bright it is? I don't want that. I just want very subtle. So I'll take my opacity down to 25%, my flow, I don't know, 15, 20. You can build it up, it's no big deal. Use your bracket keys, left and right, to bring up the size or bring down the size of your brush. And don't do what I just did. Always make sure you're actually on the mask. So I'm painting white. Okay, it's a little bit darker, would be all right. Just bringing out the highlight of this fender edge just a little bit more. Okay, so now once that's done, now it's all personal preference. You guys can all do what you want to do. I ended up adding a curves layer that added a little bit more blue to the image because I wanted the color of the car to pop. Okay, now I could have just masked out the car or everything but the car so that the effect would affect only the car, but I did it for the whole thing. So I thought it brought, I don't know, it brought a little bit of the blue hue to it, made it a little colder. And then let me get out of there. So now I have levels. Didn't really do that much, but it added just a little bit. It's hard to see. Again, this is all just doing little bits at a time. And get this out of the way here. And then I added another levels, and this was more to affect the background. Okay, I wanted the black above the car to really pop, and it affects the whole thing. So if you look at this mask over here, I painted out the car so it affected everything but the car. And then the last thing I did is I did a gradient map, and what I did was, this one's black to white. Okay, just a plain black to white gradient map, and it just makes things pop a little bit if you set the layer blend mode to divide. Okay, so that's what it would normally look like. So it's just taking the highlights and the shadows and really making it pop. It's just a quick, cheap way to do anything. So you can, as you scroll, you can kind of see all the different things that it does, but divide definitely makes it pop. It gives it a little bit of sharpness. And then the only other thing I did is I added a little gradient at the bottom just to darken it up just a smidge. And again, all this is personal preference. Depends on the color of the car, depends what your style is, how you want it to pop. But if you look, you know, I got my light behind the car, I got good reflection, all the highlights are highlighted, but again, everybody has their own way of doing things. But if you're going to go through, the painstaking process of, building a custom, or, even if you just have your favorite cars and you want to photograph them, this is just a different way of doing it, just to make things pop just a little bit more. Maybe add some variety to your Instagram feed, instead of always the same white background or black background or however it is that you do photograph it. This is just another way to do it. Again, it's not the end-all be-all, and there's a lot involved. And if there's enough interest, I'll go in more depth as to using the brush tool, maybe some future videos on other ways to photograph, cutting out the backgrounds, using the pen tool, so on and so forth. So hopefully you guys found this not completely boring. And everybody has their thing, and I really enjoy Photoshop and Lightroom and being able to portray what it is that I've done, which would be either owning an older car, Hot Wheels 1/64th, 1/18th, whatever it may be, and customizing, and it really can help get some details. And down the road you can even crop if you just want a certain area that you want to pop. you know, you can do it pretty much anywhere. You can do it in Instagram itself, but you can crop out certain areas and really just highlight certain aspects of the car. You know, there's a lot of options that you can do once you've gotten to this phase. So again, hope you found it interesting. If you did, hit the subscribe, like, hit the bell, you know the deal. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.